The moment I collapsed on the floor, a sharp pain shot through my right leg, the sound a sickening crack that seemed to echo from deep within my bones. The kitchen tiles were cold as ice against my skin. I tried to push myself up with my hands but found I had no strength at all. "Oh God," I moaned, the sound startlingly clear in the empty house. The reusable grocery bag from my trip to the store had fallen beside me, its contents scattered. Tomatoes rolled across the floor, and one had even been crushed under my fall, its red pulp and juice spreading on the white tile like a pool of blood. Staring at that splash of red, I suddenly felt a wave of dizziness. "I have to get help," I whispered to myself, my right hand struggling to reach into my pocket, where I felt my phone. Thank heavens I hadn't changed out of my street clothes after coming home from the supermarket. The phone was still there. In my contacts list, my son David's name was right at the top. My finger hovered over it for a second, hesitating. Just last week, we'd had a little spat over his son Leo's schooling, and I could still clearly picture the look on his wife Brenda's face. But this was no time to hold a grudge. I pressed the call button. The phone rang for a long time, so long I thought it would go to voicemail, but finally someone picked up. "Mom?" David's voice sounded distracted. "David, I've fallen. I think my leg is broken. I can't move," I said, trying my best to keep the agony out of my voice. But as I spoke the last few words, I couldn't help but suck in a sharp breath of pain. The other end of the line went completely silent. Then I heard a faint rustling sound, as if the phone was being muffled. But I still heard it. I heard it as clear as day. It was my daughter-in-law, Brenda's voice. "Don't answer. Let her figure it out herself. We need that master bedroom for my brother when he gets married." My breath caught in my throat. A few seconds of dead silence from my son followed, and then the line went dead, leaving only the dull tone of a disconnected call in my ear. I lay flat on my back, staring up at a water stain on the kitchen ceiling from an old leak upstairs. I suddenly thought it looked like a twisted, mocking smile, laughing at my own naivety. 68 years of life, 30 years of thankless hard work, all for that one sentence. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I forced them back. "Helen, what were you expecting?" I said to myself. Ever since my husband passed away 5 years ago, this house had felt less and less like a home. After my son got married, especially after my grandson Leo was born, I thought I would finally enjoy the happiness of a full family. Instead, I slowly became a burden. The pain in my right leg grew more intense. I realized I couldn't wait any longer. "Hey Siri," I called out, waking the voice assistant on my phone. "I'm here," the gentle, robotic female voice replied. "Call 911. "Okay, calling 911. While waiting for the ambulance, I tried to drag myself toward the living room sofa. At least there were cushions there. It wouldn't be so cold and hard. Every inch I moved sent a searing pain through my leg. Cold sweat dripped from my forehead into my eyes, stinging so badly I couldn't open them. But I gritted my teeth and dragged myself, inch by inch. By the time my back finally rested against the base of the sofa, I was panting as if I'd just run a marathon. The paramedics arrived quickly. When the knock came, I mustered all my strength to shout, "Come in, it's unlocked." 2 young people in uniform rushed in, and seeing my state, immediately knelt to check on me. "Ma'am, how did you fall?" the young female paramedic asked while taking my blood pressure. "Slipped on some water on the floor," I answered briefly, not wanting to say more. "Is there any family here? Is no one home?" the male paramedic asked, looking around. "I live alone," I said, my voice so calm it surprised even me. As they were lifting me onto the stretcher, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable, came back from grocery shopping and was shocked by the scene. "Helen, what happened?" I took a tumble. "Might be a fracture." I managed a weak smile for her. "Do you want me to call David?" Mrs. Gable asked, concerned. "No, don't bother them at work." I shook my head. "The hospital has nurses. I can manage." Mrs. Gable looked like she wanted to say something more but just sighed in the end. She helped gather my scattered keys and phone, putting them in my purse. "Call me if you need anything, you hear?" The moment the ambulance doors closed, I finally let the tears fall, but I wiped them away just as quickly. "What's the use of crying?" I told myself. "Helen, what haven't you been through in this life?" When I was young, I worked the graveyard shift at the textile mill, raising my son all by myself. When my husband was sick, I stayed up for 3 days and 3 nights straight. This was just another hurdle to cross. The hospital results came back quickly. A fracture of the femoral neck in my right leg, requiring immediate surgery. "Ma'am, we need a family member to sign the consent forms for the surgery," the young, bespectacled doctor said. "Can't I sign them myself?" I asked. "Technically, yes, but you'll need someone to care for you after the operation." "I'll hire a caregiver," I said decisively, taking the consent form and signing my name. The strokes of my pen were firmer than usual, almost tearing through the paper. The surgery went smoothly, but after the anesthesia wore off, the pain hit me like a tidal wave. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old woman in the next bed being fussed over by her children. My heart felt like it had been hollowed out. When the nurse came to change my dressing, I asked her to help me contact the hospital's caregiver agency. A middle-aged woman named Maria arrived soon after. She looked down to earth and capable. "Don't you worry, ma'am," Maria said as she helped wipe my face. "I've taken care of many seniors with fractures. Anything you need, you just let me know." I nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, mostly so no one would see the tears threatening to spill over again. I woke up in the middle of the night. The only light in the room was a faint glow from the hallway nightlight filtering through the small window on the door. I fumbled for my phone. The screen read 3:15 in the morning. There was one new text message, sent by David 2 hours earlier. "Mom, my phone died earlier. Did you need something?" I looked at the words and suddenly laughed, a laugh that made my chest ache. This was the son I had raised for 40 years, too lazy to even come up with a decent lie. I didn't reply. I put the phone back on the nightstand and, with the help of the pain medication, drifted back into a deep sleep. In my dream, I was back in David's childhood. He had a high fever, and I carried him on my back for over a mile to get to the hospital. He whispered in my ear, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'll carry you too." I woke up to a wet pillow. The morning after the surgery, sunlight streamed through a gap in the curtains, casting a golden line across my hospital bed. I stared at the dust motes dancing in the beam of light, counting the drops of medicine falling from the IV bag. 1 drop, 2 drops. "Mom!" The hospital room door was thrown open, and David rushed in, out of breath. He was in a suit, his tie crooked, and a thin layer of sweat beaded on his forehead. He was carrying a bag of fruit, the plastic rustling loudly. "I heard you fell? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" He placed the fruit on the nightstand, and an apple rolled out, spinning twice on the surface. I slowly turned my head to look at him. The pain in my leg made even this simple movement difficult. My son, 40 years old, with fine lines already at the corners of his eyes, his hairline receding a little more than last year. His eyes flickered, unable to meet mine. "Phone died?" I asked softly, my voice hoarse from the anesthesia. David's face turned beet red. He looked down and straightened his tie, his fingers trembling slightly. "I was in meetings late last night. The phone really died. I only saw your missed calls this morning." I didn't expose his lie. 68 years of life had taught me that some lies are better left untouched. But they become a thorn, forever lodged in the softest part of your heart. "The doctor said you need to be hospitalized for a week of observation." David finally looked up, his gaze falling on my casted right leg. "You'll need care after the surgery. Brenda and I talked about it. We can hire a caregiver." "I've already hired one," I interrupted him, pointing to Maria, who was tidying the privacy curtain. "From the hospital. $200 a day." David visibly relaxed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "Oh, that's good. Don't worry about the money." Money. That word stung. Since my husband died, the disdain from my son and daughter-in-law had become more and more obvious, and it mostly revolved around money and the house. This 3-bedroom condo in the heart of the suburbs was the prize they had their eyes on. "David?" I said, slowly propping myself up. Maria immediately came over to adjust the back of the bed. "I was thinking of calling my old classmate, Arthur Evans, the lawyer, to ask about some things regarding a will. Do you have his number?" David's expression froze instantly. "A will?" Mom, don't be ridiculous. It's just a small fracture. When you get older, you have to plan for these things, I said calmly, taking the glass of warm water Maria handed me and taking a sip. Is Arthur still working at that law firm downtown? I'll check for you. David pulled out his phone, his fingers swiping frantically across the screen. Mom, I have another meeting at the office. I have to go. I'll come see you tonight. He practically fled, forgetting even the apple that had rolled out of the bag. Maria quietly picked up the apple, wiped it with a wet wipe, and placed it within my reach. Your son is a busy man, huh? I smiled but didn't answer. Yes. So busy he didn't have time to care for his mother with a broken leg. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived. My old classmate Arthur Evans, now a respected attorney. He wore a sharp suit, his hair was graying, but he was full of energy. He held a bouquet of carnations. Helen, look at you. How many years has it been? His booming voice made the old woman in the next bed crane her neck to see. David called me, said you were in a hurry to draw up a will. I had Maria raise the head of my bed and asked Arthur to sit in the chair beside it. Arthur, to be honest, I do have something to ask you. Once Maria had left to get hot water, I lowered my voice. My condo. If something happens to me, does David have the right to sell it? Arthur pushed his glasses up his nose and took a notebook out of his briefcase. Whose name is on the deed? My husband's and mine. After he passed, I had it changed. It's just in my name now. Then David has no right to dispose of it, Arthur said definitively. Not unless you will it to him or it goes through standard inheritance, but you have the absolute right to sell it or gift it to someone else right now. I nodded, a weight lifting from my chest. If I write a will leaving the condo to my grandson, Leo, but stipulate that he can only inherit it when he turns 25, is that possible? Of course, Arthur jotted something down in his notebook. You can set up a trust, appoint a trustee to manage the property until Leo comes of age. He hesitated for a moment. Helen, is something wrong at home? I looked at the swaying shadow of the sycamore tree outside the window. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled spots of light on the ground. Arthur, do you remember when we were young, at the textile mill? That floor manager who always used to bully the female workers? I remember. Didn't you and a few of the other girls get together and report him? We did, I said, turning my gaze back to him and smiling. The one thing I can't stand in this life is a bully. Arthur nodded thoughtfully and didn't press further. We chatted about some old classmates, and before he left, he gave me his business card, telling me to call him any time to handle the official paperwork. In the evening, David came with Brenda and Leo. Brenda was dressed in a stylish dress, her makeup perfect. The moment she walked in, she covered her nose with a handkerchief as if there was a terrible smell in the hospital. Mom, are you feeling better? She stood at the foot of the bed, deliberately keeping a distance from my injured leg. David said you wanted to make a will. I noticed David shoot her a harsh glare. Leo hid behind his parents, his backpack still on, his eyes glued to his phone screen without looking up. When you get old, you have to have a plan, I said calmly. Then I waved at Leo. Leo, come let Grandma see you. You've gotten so tall. Leo reluctantly shuffled over, his eyes never leaving his phone. Hi, Grandma. How's school? I tried to pat his head, but he subtly leaned away. It's okay, he answered curtly, then quickly retreated behind his parents. Brenda placed a bag of fruit on the nightstand. More fruit. The last time, for my birthday, they also brought fruit. It ended up rotting in the refrigerator. Mom, you know, real estate prices are skyrocketing, Brenda said suddenly, her eyes scanning the room, avoiding me. My brother is getting married, and his fiancée insists on a new house. Oh, is that so? I pretended not to understand, taking the pills Maria handed me. Mom, you need to rest, David cut in quickly. We'll come see you another day. He grabbed Brenda's arm and pulled her toward the door, with Leo trailing behind them like a little shadow. After they left, a hospital social worker, Miss Chen, came to check on my situation. She was a kind, middle-aged woman who spoke in a soft voice. Mrs. Miller, will you need care after you're discharged? Is there anyone at home who can help? My children are busy with work, I said with a smile. I've hired a caregiver. Miss Chen jotted something on her form. Your son seems very devoted. Yes, I said, looking out at the darkening sky. He's very busy, but very devoted. That evening, as Maria was giving me a sponge bath, she suddenly said, Ma'am, you're a very strong woman. I was taken aback. Why do you say that all of a sudden? I've cared for a lot of elderly people, she said, wringing out the washcloth. Many of them, when they're in pain and their children aren't around, they just complain and feel sorry for themselves. You're different. I stared at the ceiling, thinking back to my days working triple shifts at the mill, remembering how I stayed up for 3 days and 3 nights when my husband was sick, recalling the hardship of raising David on my own. You know, I said softly, in the end, the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. Maria's hand paused for a moment, then she continued, gently wiping my arm. Ma'am, if you don't mind, I can continue to care for you after you're discharged. I live in the neighborhood right next to yours. I turned to look at her, this simple woman from the countryside, her eyes sincere and warm. That would be wonderful. I'll pay you the standard market rate. No rush, she smiled. We can talk about it after your leg is healed. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in my empty condo. All the furniture was gone, except for the family portrait on the wall. In the photo, David was just a little boy, smiling so sweetly. On the day of my discharge, it was Maria who handled the paperwork. David texted, saying a critical project came up at work and he couldn't get away. Brenda didn't even bother to reply. Easy does it, ma'am, Maria said, carrying my bag in one hand and supporting me with the other, carefully navigating the steps at the hospital entrance. The early summer sun beat down relentlessly, making me a little dizzy. Maria hailed a cab, carefully noting the license plate number and taking a picture of it to send to herself. You have to be careful with cabs these days, she explained, especially for seniors with mobility issues. The car drove through familiar streets. The leaves on the sycamore trees along the road had grown large and rustled in the wind. I remembered this time last year, walking along this very road with my husband. He always loved to pick up the fallen sycamore seed pods, saying the little nuts inside were delicious when roasted. We're here. Maria's voice pulled me back to reality. In the elevator, my heart began to beat inexplicably faster. As I inserted the key into the lock, I heard the sound of the television from inside. The door opened. The living room was a complete mess. Piles of unfamiliar clothes were heaped on the sofa. The coffee table was covered in takeout containers and snack bags, and toys and Leo's school supplies were scattered across the floor. My embroidered seat cushion was tossed carelessly on the ground, a dirty shoe print clearly visible on it. What is this? Maria stood at the doorway in shock. Leaning on my cane, I slowly walked toward the master bedroom, the room my husband and I had lived in for over 20 years. The door was ajar. I pushed it open gently. The bed had unfamiliar sheets and a duvet cover. The dressing table was cluttered with Brenda's cosmetics. My treasured old photo albums were shoved onto the bottom shelf of a bookcase in the corner. The closet door wasn't closed properly, and I could see David's suits and Brenda's dresses hanging inside. They've taken over your room, Maria whispered behind me. I didn't answer. I turned and walked toward what used to be Leo's room. The door was open. My clothes were piled haphazardly on the bed. My daily necessities were stuffed into several cardboard boxes, the lids not even properly closed. Ma'am. Maria's voice was filled with anger. I raised a hand to stop her. Leaning on my cane, I slowly made my way to the balcony. My flowers, the few pots of orchids my husband had loved most, had withered from lack of water. Their dry leaves drooped pitifully. It's all right, I said softly. Just help me tidy up the guest room for now. Maria spent the entire afternoon helping me clean. She refolded my clothes and neatly arranged my belongings where they should be. I sat in a chair by the window, watching this woman, nearly 30 years my junior, bustle around for me, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. In the late afternoon, Leo came home from school. He was clearly startled to see me. Grandma, you're out of the hospital? Yes, I forced a smile. Did you miss Grandma? Leo pouted, tossed his backpack on the sofa, and said, Dad said he's working late tonight. Mom went out to dinner with my uncle. She told me to order takeout. You don't need to order takeout, I said. Grandma will cook for you. But isn't your leg? Leo looked skeptically at my cane. I can cook while sitting, I said. I hobbled toward the kitchen. What do you want to eat? Whatever, Leo said, picking up his phone to play a game, not even looking up. The kitchen was a disaster. The sink was piled high with unwashed dishes, and the fridge was stuffed with takeout boxes. I managed to find a few usable ingredients and started preparing dinner. Maria wanted to help, but I shook my head. You go on home for today. Come back tomorrow. I wanted some time alone with my grandson. Dinner was simple: scrambled eggs with tomatoes, stir-fried potatoes with green peppers, and a bowl of seaweed egg drop soup. I brought the dishes to the dining table and called Leo to eat. He dawdled for a long time before finally coming over. He took one bite of the potatoes and immediately frowned. It's too bland. Grandma used less salt. It's healthier for you, I said, serving him a bowl of soup. Leo forced down a few bites and then put his chopsticks down. I'm full. Then, without a backward glance, he went back to his room, which was now my room. As I was slowly clearing the dishes, I suddenly heard Leo on the phone in his room. It's so annoying. Grandma's cooking is awful. Yeah. And she took my room. My mom says when she dies, the condo will be ours anyway. My hand trembled. A plate slipped from my grasp and shattered on the floor. The next morning, I called Leo's homeroom teacher, Mrs. Davis. Mrs. Davis. Hello. This is Leo Miller's grandmother. Yes. How has he been doing in school lately? Mrs. Davis hesitated for a moment. Mrs. Miller, Leo has been having trouble focusing in class recently, and the quality of his homework has declined. Last week, he even got into a fight with a classmate. A fight? Why? I heard it was because the classmate said something like, "Your parents don't respect their elders." My heart clenched. After hanging up, I found Leo's class schedule and saw he had gym class that afternoon. I asked Maria to go to the grocery store for me to buy some ingredients. I carefully prepared a bento box lunch for him. Rice balls shaped like teddy bears, fruit cut into hearts, and his favorite teriyaki chicken wings. Ma'am, your leg isn't fully healed. Don't overdo it, Maria said, looking at me with concern. I'm fine, I said, wiping the sweat from my brow. Could you take this to his school for me? Just say it's a special lunch from me. When Leo came home that afternoon, his expression was different. He lingered by the kitchen doorway and whispered, "Thanks for the lunch, Grandma." A warmth spread through my chest. Did you like it? My friends all thought it was really cool, he said, a rare smile appearing on his face before he quickly suppressed it. I'm going to do my homework. From that day on, I prepared a special lunch for Leo every day, sometimes with cartoon characters, sometimes with his favorite dishes, and had Maria deliver it to his school each time. Gradually, the first thing Leo did when he got home was no longer to hide in his room, but to come to the kitchen to see what I was doing. A week later, Leo came to my room on his own initiative. "Grandma, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." I put down the book I was reading. Why are you so nice to me? Even though my parents are so..." He looked down, his voice trailing off. I patted the space on the bed next to me, motioning for him to sit. "Because you're my grandson, Leo. Grandma loves you. It has nothing to do with your parents." Leo was silent for a long time. Then he suddenly said, "The other night, I heard Mom and Dad fighting. Mom said that as soon as your leg is better, they're going to send you to a nursing home." I had expected this day would come, but hearing it confirmed still felt like being doused with a bucket of ice water. "Grandma," Leo looked up, his eyes shining. "I won't let them do that." I stroked his head. This time he didn't pull away. "Don't worry, Grandma has a plan." The next day, I contacted a real estate agency near our neighborhood and scheduled an appraisal for the condo. Then I made a list for Maria, asking her to help me organize my valuable items and important documents. "Ma'am, what is this?" Maria looked at the list, which included the condo deed, bank books, and jewelry box, and hesitated. "Preparing for a rainy day," I said simply. That afternoon, Brenda's brother, Brandon, showed up unexpectedly with a young woman he introduced as his girlfriend. The woman was wearing heavy makeup and looked around the moment she walked in. "Hi, ma'am," she said perfunctorily, then excitedly grabbed Brandon's arm. "The master bedroom gets great light. Can we knock down the balcony wall?" "Of course we can," Brandon said smugly. "Once my sister gets the deed transferred to us, we can renovate it however we want." I sat on the sofa, watching them point and plan in my house as if I were already gone, a faint smile on my face. That night, I heard a fierce argument coming from the master bedroom. Leaning on my cane, I quietly approached and heard Brenda's shrill voice. "You can't even handle your own mother. If she doesn't die soon, my brother can't get married, and I'm done with you." David's voice was low and muffled, but his tone was clearly one of compromise. I slowly made my way back to my room. From the nightstand drawer, I took out a notebook and wrote 3 words on a fresh page. "It's time. Mrs. Miller, your leg hasn't fully healed. You don't need to be in such a hurry to finalize the will." Arthur's young assistant, a Mr. Chen, looked at me with concern. "It's all right, I feel much better." I adjusted my cane and sat down in a chair at the notary's office. Today was Thursday. I had used the excuse of a follow-up hospital visit to come here alone. Arthur was already waiting, several documents laid out neatly on the table. "Everything is ready," Arthur said, sliding a document toward me. "As per your wishes, the property will be inherited by your grandson, Leo Miller, but it will be managed by a trust until he is 25 years old. Your son and daughter-in-law will have residency rights only, not the right to sell or transfer the property." I carefully read every word. The will also stipulated that if Leo were to pass away before inheriting the property, it would be donated to the city's children's hospital. "And this," Arthur handed me another document, "is an exclusive right to sell agreement for the property. Only you can revoke it." My hand was steady as I signed my name, without a hint of hesitation. After signing all the documents, I felt a strange sense of relief, as if a heavy burden I had carried for years had finally been lifted. The sun was shining when I left the notary's office. Instead of going straight home, I had the taxi driver take me to the community senior center. The young woman at the front desk was very welcoming. "Ma'am, what class are you interested in signing up for? We have calligraphy, painting, dance. Do you have a public speaking class?" I asked. When I was young, I'd participated in a recitation contest at the mill and won second prize. "We do. It's on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. In fact, there's a class happening right now. Would you like to sit in?" I nodded and followed her to a classroom on the second floor. More than 20 seniors were practicing vocal exercises led by a teacher. I sat in the back row, listening to their strong voices, and suddenly felt a long-lost sense of vitality. After the class, I signed up immediately, and also enrolled in a painting class and a smartphone skills workshop. "You're very hip, ma'am," the receptionist said with a smile. "A lot of seniors can barely use their phones." "You live and learn," I said as I paid the fees, carefully placing the class schedule in my wallet. On the way home, I received a call from Maria. "Ma'am, your son called looking for you. He said you weren't answering your phone." "I had it on silent, didn't hear it," I said. "Tell him I went for a walk in the park after my checkup and I'm on my way home now." After hanging up, I had the driver stop at the supermarket by my building and bought some groceries. While checking out, I saw Brandon and his girlfriend by the freezer section, picking out ice cream. They were wrapped around each other, completely oblivious to me standing nearby. "I've already figured out the design style." The girl's excited voice drifted over. "We'll knock down a wall in the master bedroom to make a suite, and I want a whole wall of mirrors in the walk-in closet." "Don't worry," Brandon said, pinching her cheek. "My sister said we'll only have to wait 6 months at most." I calmly paid for my groceries and walked out of the supermarket with my bags. The sun felt warm on my skin, but inside, my heart was covered in a layer of frost. When I got home, David was there, which was rare. He was pacing back and forth in the living room. "Mom, where have you been?" he asked, coming up to me with an unnatural concern in his voice. "What did the doctor say about your recovery?" "It's going well," I said, putting the grocery bags in the kitchen. "I should be off the cane in another month or so." That's good," David said, wringing his hands, looking like he wanted to say something else. I poured myself a glass of water and slowly sat down on the sofa. "If you have something to say, just say it." "Well, it's like this." David sat across from me. "Brenda's brother is getting married. The girl's family is well off, and they're insisting on a new house. So, we were thinking. Thinking what? I looked him straight in the eye. You're getting older, and it's a lot of work to maintain such a big place. David avoided my gaze. Why don't you? Why don't you move in with us, and we can sign the condo over to Brandon? They'll pay a portion of the value, of course. How much? David clearly hadn't expected me to ask that. He paused. Half the market value, maybe? We're family, after all. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo in a prime school district in the Chicago suburbs, I said slowly. The market value is at least $600,000. You want to sell it to your brother-in-law for $300,000. Mom! David's face flushed. Brenda only has one brother. And I only have one son, I interrupted. But you only have one mother. David's face went from red to white. What? What are you trying to say? Nothing, I said, standing up. I'm tired. I'm going to rest. At dinner, Brenda, for the first time in a long while, cooked a few dishes and kept putting food on my plate. Leo looked at his parents, then at me, his eyes full of confusion. Mom, Brenda said with a forced smile. Did David talk to you about Brandon's situation? He did, I said, putting down my chopsticks. And I don't agree. Brenda's face immediately darkened. Why not? Don't you think it's a waste for you to live in such a big place by yourself? I don't. Are you always this selfish? Brenda's voice rose. My brother is waiting for this house to get married. What does your brother's marriage have to do with me? I asked calmly. Brenda slammed her hands on the table and shot up, the chair screeching against the floor. You ungrateful old hag. We try to be nice, and this is what we get. Brenda! David snapped at her, but his voice was weak. Leo suddenly pushed his bowl away. I'm done, he said, then quickly left the table. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the sounds of arguing from the master bedroom, my heart as still as water. In the middle of the night, I heard a soft knock on my door. Grandma? It was Leo's voice. I opened the door. Leo stood there, his eyes red. They said they're going to send you to a nursing home. Don't worry, I stroked his head. Grandma isn't going anywhere. But, Leo, I asked softly, do you want to live with Grandma? Leo nodded vigorously. Then Grandma has a plan. I took a key from my drawer and handed it to him. This is the key to my mailbox. From now on, if any mail comes for me, you get it. Don't let your parents know, okay? Leo clutched the key tightly. Grandma, I'll protect you. The next morning, I announced a decision. I've signed up for the Senior Center's Golden Years Travel Group. We're leaving next week for a 2-week trip to see the fall colors in New England. David and Brenda looked at each other, clearly caught off guard. Mom, your leg isn't fully healed yet, David said hesitantly. The doctor said moderate activity is good for recovery, I said, sipping my oatmeal. Besides, Maria is coming with me. It will be very safe. But the cost. Brenda's eyes darted around. I'll be using my own retirement savings, I said, putting down my bowl. You don't need to worry. I could see the calculation in Brenda's eyes. The old woman is going on a trip, giving them 2 weeks of free reign in the house. Maybe they could even find the deed. Well, have a wonderful time. Brenda managed to squeeze out a smile. After breakfast, I secretly passed Leo a note. This is Grandma's new cell phone number. Only you know it. Call me any time if you need anything. Leo carefully tucked the note into the innermost pocket of his backpack and gave me a little wink. On the day the tour group departed, Maria helped me with my luggage and saw me all the way onto the airport shuttle bus. Ma'am, are you sure you don't need me to go with you? Maria asked with concern. I'm sure, I said, patting her hand. It's more important for you to keep an eye on things at home for me. I deliberately chose a window seat and watched the scenery fly by. This was my first time traveling alone in many years, and I felt a strange sense of freedom. There were over 20 seniors in the tour group, most of them traveling with a spouse or friend. Because of my leg, I was placed in the middle of the group, under the special care of the tour guide. Our guide was a lively young woman, everyone called Amy, Mrs. Miller. You're traveling all by yourself? Aren't your folks worried? Amy asked, chatting with me on the bus to Vermont. I told them, I answered briefly. not wanting to discuss family matters. "You're very brave," Amy said sincerely. "A lot of seniors are afraid to leave home without their kids." I smiled, but didn't tell her that sometimes the people who hurt you the most aren't strangers, but those closest to you. The cobblestone streets of the historic towns were not kind to my injured leg, but I managed to keep up with the group for most of the sights. In the evenings, we stayed in charming bed and breakfasts. One evening, in a beautiful inn in the Berkshires, I decided to sit out on the porch while the others went to a local concert. The inn's porch had several wicker chairs. I sat in one, looking at the distant mountains glowing golden in the sunset. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my right leg, and I couldn't help but gasp. "Do you need some help?" A gentle male voice asked from behind me. I turned to see a gentleman with graying hair standing there, holding 2 mugs of hot tea. "Thank you. It's just an old injury acting up," I said, trying to move my leg. "I'm Professor Miller, Robert Miller. I used to teach at the medical school," he said, handing me a mug. "May I take a look at your leg?" I hesitated for a moment, then rolled up my pant leg. Professor Miller knelt and professionally examined the area. "The fracture is healing well, but the long walks are probably causing some inflammation." He took a tube of ointment from his pocket. "Try this. It's my own formula." The ointment felt cool on my skin, and the pain soon subsided. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "Are you traveling alone as well?" "I am," Professor Miller said, sitting in the wicker chair next to mine. "My wife passed last year. My children all live overseas." We talked for a long time, from our careers to our hobbies. It turned out he was an orthopedic specialist before retiring and now taught health classes at a senior center. He was witty and humorous, and before I knew it, I found myself laughing more freely than I had in a very long time. For the next few days, Professor Miller became my temporary travel companion. He helped me with my luggage and offered professional advice when my leg acted up. At one particularly scenic viewpoint that required a bit of a walk, he insisted on renting a wheelchair for me and pushed me along the most difficult part of the path. "What about your son? Why isn't he here with you?" he asked one day. I was silent for a moment, then briefly explained my situation at home. After listening, Professor Miller gently patted my hand. "Helen, you're much stronger than I am." "Just call me Helen," I said, feeling a little self-conscious. "Helen." He looked at me seriously. "Sometimes, fighting back isn't selfish, it's self-love." I nodded, a tight knot in my heart loosening just a little. On the last night of the trip, we had a farewell dinner at a restaurant in Boston. Professor Miller quietly slipped me a piece of paper. "This is my contact information. Let's keep in touch when we get back." I took the note and carefully placed it in my wallet. "Thank you for all your help these past few days." "My pleasure," he smiled. "I hope to see you at the senior center sometime." On the flight back, I flipped through the photos on my phone and realized I was smiling in most of them. It was the first time since my husband's death that I felt life still had color. Maria picked me up at the airport, looking flustered. "Ma'am, there's been a situation at home." "What is it?" My heart sank. "Your son and his wife. They turned the master bedroom upside down," Maria whispered. "They were looking for something." I let out a cold laugh. The deed, I imagine. When I got home, the air was thick with the smell of stale smoke and alcohol. The living room was littered with takeout boxes and beer cans. My embroidered sofa cushions were stained with something suspicious. David and Brenda clearly hadn't expected me back a day early. They came stumbling out of the master bedroom in a panic. "Mom, why are you back early?" David stammered. "I was tired of traveling," I said, surveying the messy living room. "Where's Leo?" "He's at a friend's house," Brenda said, her eyes darting away. Leaning on my cane, I walked directly to the master bedroom. When I opened the door, the sight made my blood run cold. All the drawers were pulled out, clothes from the closet were thrown everywhere, and even the mattress had been flipped over. "What were you looking for?" I turned and asked them coldly. "Nothing," David stammered. Brenda suddenly stood up straight. "The deed. What of it? This house is going to be ours sooner or later." I slowly walked to the dressing table and pulled open the bottom drawer, where I used to keep my jewelry. As I expected, the gold necklace my husband gave me, my jade bracelet, and the pair of pearl earrings were all gone. "Where is my jewelry?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Who took your jewelry?" Brenda's voice was high-pitched, but her eyes were shifty. I didn't say another word. I took out my phone and dialed 911. "What are you doing?" David asked in horror. "What does it look like?" "I'm calling the police," I said calmly. "The house has been robbed. Valuable jewelry has been stolen." "Mom!" David rushed forward, trying to grab my phone. "Are you crazy?" I dodged him. The call had already connected. "Hello, I'd like to report a robbery." 20 minutes later, 2 police officers were standing in my living room. Brenda's face was ashen, and David's forehead was beaded with sweat. "Ma'am, are you certain the jewelry was stolen?" the younger officer asked. "Positive," I nodded. "I checked it right before my trip. Now it's all gone." "What's the approximate value?" "Around $20,000, I said, deliberately inflating the number. Some of it was antique, with sentimental value. The older officer turned to David and Brenda. "And who are you two?" "My son and daughter-in-law," I said. "They were staying here while I was away." The officer's gazes sharpened. "Did you see anyone suspicious entering or leaving the premises?" "No," David stammered. Brenda suddenly broke down. "I took it, but I didn't steal it. I'm her daughter-in-law. What's the big deal about borrowing some jewelry?" The officer looked at her sternly. "Taking someone else's property without permission is theft." "Mom," David pleaded, looking at me. Brenda was just confused. "Please, drop the charges." I looked at them and said, enunciating each word, "Give me back my things. All of them. Now." Brenda ran into the master bedroom, crying, and came back with my jewelry from a shoebox, slamming it on the coffee table. "Here, take it, you cheap old miser." "Ma'am, please check if anything is missing," the older officer advised. I carefully took inventory. The pearl earrings were missing. Brenda, gritting her teeth, pulled the earrings from her pocket and threw them at me. "Satisfied now? You old hag. Watch your language," the young officer barked. In the end, at my request, the police didn't take Brenda away, but they filed a detailed report and warned her that her actions were illegal and would be dealt with seriously if they happened again. After the police left, the atmosphere in the house was colder than ice. David sat on the sofa without saying a word. Brenda was in the bedroom, throwing things around, and Leo was hiding in his room. I slowly began to tidy up the mess, feeling strangely calm. Tonight's drama had torn away the last shred of warmth between us. Before going to sleep, Leo quietly came to my room. "Grandma, were they looking for this?" He pulled a brown document folder from his backpack. "My condo deed." "How did you get this?" I asked, astonished. "The other night, I heard Mom and Dad talking about stealing the deed to get it transferred, so I took it from your drawer before they could," Leo said proudly. "I've kept it hidden in my backpack the whole time. They couldn't find it." I hugged my grandson tightly, the tears finally falling. "Good boy, thank you." That night, I slept soundly. In my dreams, there were no arguments, no betrayal, only the golden sunlight on the distant mountains and the steady feel of Robert Miller's hands pushing my wheelchair. I had been considering the decision to put the house up for sale for a long time. 3 days after returning from my trip, I made an appointment with a real estate agent, a young man named Kevin, to come and appraise the property. I deliberately chose a weekday morning when I knew David and Brenda would be at work. "Ma'am, this condo has been kept in excellent condition," Kevin said, measuring the living room. "Great layout, good school district. It'll sell fast." I sat on the sofa, watching him jot down numbers in his notebook. "What do you think it could sell for?" At the current market rate, Kevin looked around, somewhere between $650,000 and $700,000. The figure was even higher than I had anticipated. I did a quick mental calculation. After paying off the small, remaining mortgage, the rest would be enough to buy a comfortable one-bedroom unit in a high-end senior living community, with a substantial retirement fund left over. "When are you thinking of listing it?" Kevin asked. "As soon as possible," I said. After Kevin left, I began to sort through my personal belongings. Photographs, letters, the books my husband left behind. These were my true treasures. Not this condo filled with memories, but also with so much pain. At 3 in the afternoon, I called the sales office of a senior living community and scheduled a tour for the next day. "Grandma, what are you doing?" Leo asked, coming home from school and seeing me organizing photo albums. "Grandma is getting ready to move," I said softly. Leo's eyes widened. "Where to?" "A place with lots of other grandmas and grandpas." I opened an album and pointed to an old photo. "Look, this was your grandpa when he was young. So handsome." Leo stared at the photo for a long time. "Was Grandpa nice to Dad when he was little?" "Of course," I said, stroking the yellowed photograph. "When your dad was a boy, your grandpa used to ride him to school on his bike every day, rain or shine." Leo was silent for a moment. "Then why is Dad?" I didn't answer his question. I just closed the album. "Leo, remember, no matter what happens, Grandma will always love you." The next morning, I went to tour the senior living community by myself. The place was much better than I had imagined. Beautifully landscaped gardens, spacious and bright common areas, a medical clinic, a library, a gym, and other amenities. I fell in love with a south-facing one-bedroom apartment, the living room drenched in sunlight. "You have excellent taste, Mrs. Miller," the sales consultant said enthusiastically. "This unit just became available last week. It's very popular." "I'll take it," I said directly. After completing the reservation paperwork, I had lunch in the community dining hall. At the next table, a woman with a full head of silver hair was discussing an afternoon dance rehearsal with her friends. "Are you new here?" she asked me kindly. "Not officially moved in yet," I replied. "I've been here for 3 years," the woman said with a smile. "It's much more liberating than living with your children. There's a bridge game this afternoon. Want to come watch?" I gladly accepted. The afternoon bridge game was lively, with over 20 seniors split among several tables, their laughter echoing in the room. I was watching from the side when an elderly gentleman warmly invited me to join. "Helen?" A familiar voice came from behind me. I turned around, surprised to see Professor Miller standing there. "Robert, what are you doing here?" "I live here," he said with a smile. "I forgot to tell you last time. I moved in right after I retired." "It's a small world," I said. Robert introduced me to the others, and they all warmly welcomed the newcomer. Before I knew it, I had spent a delightful afternoon. On the way home, my phone rang. It was David. "Mom, where are you?" His voice was agitated. "The real estate agent called. He said you're selling the condo." "That's right. I've already signed the listing agreement," I said calmly. "Are you out of your mind?" David was practically shouting. "This is our home." "It's my house, and I have the right to do what I want with it," I said, and hung up. A storm was waiting for me when I got home. David and Brenda were in the living room, their faces like thunderclouds. Leo was hiding in his room with the door shut tight. "Mom, what is the meaning of this?" David confronted me. "Why are you selling the house?" "I want a change of scenery," I said, placing my purse on the sofa and slowly sitting down. "No!" Brenda shrieked. "This house is ours." "Yours?" I took the deed out of my purse and slowly unfolded it. "Read the name on here." David stared at the deed, his face turning from red to white. "Mom, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, folding the deed. "I've already put a deposit down on a place at a senior living community. I'm moving next week." "A senior living community?" David looked as if he'd never heard the term. "You're going to a nursing home?" "It's a senior community, not a nursing home," I corrected him. Brenda suddenly lunged at me, trying to grab my purse. "Give me that deed." I was prepared and quickly moved the purse out of her reach. "Brenda, have you forgotten the police warning?" David pulled Brenda back and turned to me. "Mom, what do you want?" "It's simple," I said, looking my son in the eye. "I'm selling the house. You have 1 week to move out. I will give you $100,000 for a down payment on a smaller place of your own." "100,000?" Brenda shrieked. "This house is worth over $600,000. "Legally," I said calmly. "I don't have to give you a single penny." David sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "Mom, why are you being so cruel?" I took a deep breath. "David, do you remember the day I broke my leg? Do you remember what you heard Brenda say on the phone?" David's head shot up, his face pale. "Don't answer." Let her figure it out herself. We need that master bedroom for my brother when he gets married. I repeated her words exactly. And do you remember what you did? You hung up the phone. David's lips trembled, but he couldn't speak. Is that true, Dad? Leo's voice suddenly came from the hallway. We hadn't noticed him come out. Leo, go back to your room, Brenda snapped. No. Leo ran into the middle of the living room, tears streaming down his face. I heard you. I heard you talking about sending Grandma away, and I saw Mom steal Grandma's jewelry. What nonsense are you talking? Brenda raised her hand to hit him. I quickly stepped in front of Leo, shielding him with my body. That's enough, I yelled. Leo, come with me. I took Leo back to my room and closed the door, still hearing Brenda's hysterics and David's feeble attempts to calm her down. Leo collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Grandma, I don't want to live with them, he choked out. I stroked his back. Don't be afraid. Grandma has a plan. That night, the tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. David and Brenda argued in the master bedroom while Leo slept in my room. I sat by the bed, looking at the moonlight outside, and made a decision. At breakfast the next morning I announced it. Leo will be moving to the senior community with me. There's an excellent school nearby. Absolutely not, Brenda immediately objected. You have 1 week to consider my offer, I said, unmoved. Either you accept my terms or you get nothing. David ate his breakfast in silence, not saying a word. The next few days were the quiet before the storm. David left early and came home late. Brenda shot me cold glares. Only Leo, after coming home from school each day, would excitedly ask me what the senior community was like. On the 5th night, David knocked on my door. Mom, can we talk? He looked exhausted. I let him in and he sat in the chair by the window. I agree to your arrangement, David said with difficulty. But can Leo still live with us? Leo will decide for himself, I said firmly. David was silent for a long time. Then he suddenly knelt on the floor. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't help him up. I just looked out at the night sky. David, do you know what hurts me the most? It wasn't that you didn't care for me. It's that you became someone I don't even recognize. David's shoulders shook with silent sobs. If your father were alive, he would be so disappointed, I said softly. That sentence seemed to be the final blow. He collapsed on the floor, weeping uncontrollably. A week later, the moving company arrived. I didn't have much, and it was packed up quickly. Leo insisted on coming with me, and David didn't object. Brenda stood at the door, watching with cold eyes. As I was leaving, she suddenly said, "You'll regret this." I didn't reply. I just took Leo's hand and got into the car. As the car pulled away from the building, I looked back at the home where I had lived for over 20 years. The sun shone on the familiar balcony where my husband's beloved orchids used to grow. "Grandma, are you sad?" Leo asked softly. I stroked his head. A little, but mostly I feel free. Life at the senior community was surprisingly pleasant. My room faced south and was always filled with sunshine. Leo transferred to the nearby school with a dedicated shuttle bus for pickup and drop-off. Professor Miller visited often, helping me get acquainted with the community's activities. After the money from the house sale came through, I transferred $100,000 to David as promised. The rest of the money I managed carefully. Part as a retirement fund, part for Leo's education trust, and a portion I planned to use for something meaningful. As for the place I once called home, it was now in the past, and the future, while uncertain, was at least in my own hands. The first month at the senior community passed like a dream. I woke up to sunshine every morning, had delicious meals in the dining hall, and had a full day of activities to choose from. Choir, calligraphy, fitness classes. I even signed up for a computer course to learn video editing software to organize my old photos. Leo adjusted quickly. The new school was better than his old one, with more attentive teachers. Every day after school, he would excitedly tell me about his day. "Grandma, Mrs. Anderson said my essay writing has improved a lot." Leo proudly showed me his composition book one evening. I put on my reading glasses and carefully read the essay, titled "The Person I Admire Most." He had written about me from calling the ambulance myself after I fell to bravely selling the house to start a new life. Grandma? Mrs. Anderson said you're an amazing woman, Leo said, his eyes sparkling. Mrs. Anderson is a good teacher, I said with a smile, a pang of sadness in my heart. David used to look at me with that same adoration. What had changed him? The second month, I started writing my memoirs. From a young woman working at the textile mill to a floor manager, from meeting my husband on a blind date to raising David alone, memories flooded back. I often found myself in tears as I wrote. Professor Miller became my most devoted reader. Every Wednesday evening, he would come to my room to listen to me read the latest chapter and offer thoughtful feedback. Helen, you should get this published, he said seriously one evening. This isn't just your story, it's the memory of a generation. I'll think about it, I said, though I felt a little intimidated. I was just an ordinary person my whole life. How could I write a book? Meanwhile, through my old neighbor, Mrs. Gable, I learned that David's family was not doing well. They had used the $100,000 down payment to buy a small 2-bedroom apartment, and the mortgage was a heavy burden. Brenda's brother, furious about not getting the condo, had a huge fight with her and cut off contact. What surprised me most was that David had been demoted at work, from department manager to a regular staff member. I heard it was because of a major mistake on a project, Mrs. Gable said over the phone. I don't know the details. After hanging up, I sat by the window, lost in thought. David had always been a diligent child, rarely making mistakes. Could this work blunder be related to the turmoil at home? That weekend, Leo went to visit his parents and came back looking downcast. Mom and Dad fought again, he told me quietly. Dad doesn't talk at all, and Mom just cries all the time. I hugged my grandson, my heart aching, not knowing what to say. The next day, at the community center, I ran into an old friend of Professor Miller's, a retired psychology professor. The relationship between adult children and their parents often reflects their own psychological state, the old professor said after listening to my concerns. Your son's sense of self-worth may have been built entirely on the role of being a good son. When that role collapsed, his entire life was thrown off balance. Her words gave me a lot to think about. Perhaps I had overemphasized filial piety in David's upbringing, causing him to lose his sense of self. One late autumn afternoon, the community manager told me that a middle-aged man had been lingering at the entrance for a long time, asking which building Helen Miller lived in. He didn't give his name, but he looked to be in his 40s, a bit haggard, the manager described. I knew immediately who it was, but to my surprise, David didn't come in. He just stood at the gate for a while and then left. Should I go after him? The manager asked. I shook my head. No, that's all right. That night, I tossed and turned. Why did David come? Why didn't he come in? Was he in some kind of trouble? The next day, I called his phone. It rang for a long time, but no one answered. I sent a text. You can come see me if you need to. No reply. A week later, Mrs. Gable told me that David and Brenda were filing for divorce. I hear it's been very messy, Mrs. Gable sighed. David is insisting on it, but Brenda refuses and has been causing scenes at his office. The news shocked me. Although I disliked Brenda, I had never wished for them to divorce. I tried to contact David again, but still no response. On the first weekend of November, Leo went to see his parents as usual, but came back early, his eyes red. Dad wasn't home, he sobbed. Mom said he moved out. I held Leo, gently patting his back, just as I used to comfort David when he was little. At that moment, I realized that no matter what David had done, he was still my son, and my heart still ached for him. The next day, I made a decision. I asked the community center to help me contact a family therapist and scheduled an appointment for the following week. What issue would you like to address? The therapist asked over the phone. I want to learn how to forgive, I replied, and I hope to be forgiven. The therapist was silent for a moment. That's a very good place to start. The day before my appointment, the community held a talent show. I sang the lead in the choir's performance of Amazing Grace. Dressed in a pale blue dress, standing under the spotlight, I felt a little nervous. The music began, and I took a deep breath and started to sing. As I got to the second verse, I glanced out at the audience and saw a familiar figure in the last row, David. He was wearing a rumpled suit, sitting alone, his gaze fixed on the stage. My voice trembled for a moment, but I quickly regained my composure. After the performance, I looked to the back row, but David was gone. That man in the last row, when did he leave? I asked a staff member. He left right after your song, he replied. He seemed to be in a hurry. I think he was crying. I stood there, suddenly understanding. David didn't want to see me because he was afraid to. The shame and guilt he felt were probably deeper than I had imagined. During the reception after the show, I walked out to the community garden alone. The autumn wind rustled the fallen leaves. I sat on a bench, watching the sunset. After some time, a figure slowly approached and sat down next to me. "Mom," David said in a low, hoarse voice. I didn't turn, just kept looking ahead. "Did you enjoy the show?" "I did." He paused. "You sang beautifully, just like when you used to sing me to sleep." My eyes welled up. "I did often sing that song to David when he was a boy." "Why were you afraid to see me?" I asked softly. David lowered his head. "I was ashamed. I'm so sorry, Mom." "Do you know what hurt the most?" I said, looking at the fading Sunday. "It wasn't that you didn't take care of me. It was that you became someone who even you despised." David's shoulders began to shake. "Mom, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong." "Wrong about what?" "Wrong. Wrong for treating you like a burden. Wrong for letting Brenda bully you. Wrong for forgetting who I was." His voice broke. "And wrong for thinking money was the most important thing. Wrong for breaking your heart." David finally broke down, sobbing. "Mom, can you ever forgive me?" I turned to look at the man I had once loved with all my heart, now with tears streaming down his face, looking like a lost child. "Forgiveness takes time," I said softly, "but we can start over." David looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Really?" "Really," I nodded. "But on one condition." "What is it?" "You have to forgive yourself first," I said, taking his hand. "And then, find the sun that I was always so proud of." The last rays of the sunset enveloped us, stretching our shadows long on the ground. In the distance, Leo was running toward us, holding up a drawing, excitedly shouting something. At that moment, I understood. The pain would never completely disappear, but love could grow again. Just like the flowers in the garden, they wither in the winter but sprout anew in the spring. David started visiting me every week. At first, the visits were brief. He would sit awkwardly in my small living room, sipping tea and making small talk. Gradually, he began to relax, sharing his troubles at work and the little things in his life. "The new vice president at my company is impossible to work with," David complained one Sunday afternoon. "He's always finding fault with me." "Why you, specifically?" I asked. David was silent for a moment. Probably because I took too much time off before to deal with Brenda's brother's issues, and I made a lot of mistakes at work. I didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, I asked, "So what are you going to do?" "I want to quit," David sighed. "But I'm afraid I won't find another good job." "Do you remember what your father used to say?" I asked, handing him a freshly baked cookie. "A rolling stone gathers no moss." David took the cookie, looking thoughtful. "Mom, what do you think I should do?" "I'm not you. I can't make that decision for you," I said softly. "But whatever you choose, as long as you put your heart into it, I will support you." David looked up at me, a long-lost sparkle in his eyes. "Thanks, Mom." In early December, David told me his divorce from Brenda was finalized. "She insisted on keeping the apartment," David said with a wry smile. I agreed. I didn't want to live there anymore anyway. "So where are you living now?" "I rented a small apartment near my office," David said, taking a sip of tea. "It's convenient." "Does Leo know?" "He does." David's expression softened. "He said he wants to live with me, but I think it's better for him to be with you for now, until I get my life back on track." I nodded. "You're always welcome here." Before Christmas, the community organized a craft fair to raise money for children in underprivileged areas. I knitted a batch of coasters and placemats, and Professor Miller helped me set up a beautiful display. "Mrs. Miller, your craftsmanship is amazing," a community staff member exclaimed. "Something I learned at the textile mill when I was young," I explained with a smile. "I haven't done it in decades. so I'm a bit rusty. On the day of the fair, David came with Leo and even helped me with the customers. Watching him interact so warmly with the other residents, I could hardly recognize the sullen man from a few months ago. "Mom, your items are almost sold out." David ran over to report excitedly. "Professor Miller says you should raise the price." "No need for that," I shook my head. "It's for charity after all." After the event, the three of us had dinner in the community dining hall. Leo chattered on about his school's Christmas party, and David chimed in with questions. The atmosphere was warm and relaxed. "Mom," David hesitated as he was leaving. "Can I come spend New Year's with you?" "Of course you can." I patted his arm. "This is your home too." On New Year's Day, David arrived early, his hands full of grocery bags. "I bought some ingredients," he said excitedly. "I'm cooking today." I looked at him in surprise. "You know how to cook now?" "I've learned a few simple dishes," David said with an embarrassed smile. "Living alone, I can't eat takeout every day." Watching his busy figure in the kitchen, I was reminded of my late husband. He was the same, always insisting on cooking for special occasions. The dinner was a success. Although the dishes were a bit salty, Leo and I enjoyed every bite. After dinner, we watched television and chatted, like any normal three-generation family. "Mom," David said suddenly, "I quit my job." "Are you sure?" "Yes," he nodded. "I want to start over. Find a job I'm truly passionate about." "Do you have any plans?" "I majored in design in college." David's eyes lit up. "Even though I've been in management all these years, I never stopped sketching. I want to try my hand at interior design." "That's wonderful," I encouraged him. "It's never too late to start." David looked at me gratefully. "Thanks, Mom. If it weren't for your support—" "Silly boy," I interrupted. "I'm your mother." In January, David enrolled in an interior design course and started taking on small projects online to practice. His income was unstable, but he was full of energy every day. Even Leo said his dad seemed younger. At the same time, with Professor Miller's help, my memoir found a small publisher willing to take it on. The editor suggested I add more photos and specific historical details, so I began another round of revisions. "Helen, this section on the technological innovations at the textile mill is fascinating," Professor Miller said, reading the latest chapter. "This kind of first-hand account is invaluable." "It's just old stories," I said, feeling a little embarrassed. "Nothing special." "On the contrary," Professor Miller said seriously. "It's these memories of ordinary people that make up the truest history." One day in February, David called me, ecstatic. "Mom, I landed a big project. The design for a new coffee shop." "That's fantastic." I was genuinely happy for him. "When do you start?" "I'm going to take measurements tomorrow." David's voice was full of excitement. "The owner said if this goes well, he'll recommend me to other clients." The coffee shop project was a huge success. The owner was thrilled and, true to his word, recommended David to several of his friends. By March, David was so busy he was considering renting a small office and officially starting his own studio. "Mom, I need a favor," David said mysteriously one evening. "I have a meeting with an important client next week. Could you lend me some money to buy a decent suit?" I looked at the slightly worn suit he was wearing and nodded. "We'll go to the mall tomorrow." The next day, I took David to the best department store in the city and bought him 2 high-quality suits, along with new shirts and shoes. "Mom, this is too expensive," David said, looking uneasily at the receipt. "It's an investment," I said simply. "First impressions matter." In April, David's design studio officially opened. Although he was the only employee, business was steadily growing. He moved out of the small apartment and rented a more comfortable one-bedroom, making sure to set up a room for Leo. "Once the studio is more stable, I'm thinking of getting a mortgage for a small house." David shared his plans with me. "I'll save up for the down payment myself. I won't use your money again." "I'm proud of you, son," I said sincerely. Those words seemed to touch him. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Mom, the day you broke your leg." It's in the past," I interrupted him softly. "Let's both look forward, okay?" David nodded, his eyes glistening. "Okay." In May, my memoir, titled Memories of a Mill Woman, was officially published. The publisher held a small launch event at the community center, which attracted some local media and readers. David and Leo sat in the front row, looking at me with pride as I was being interviewed. "Mrs. Miller, what was your initial motivation for writing this book?" a reporter asked. I looked at David and Leo in the audience. At first, I just wanted to record my own story. But as I wrote, I realized these memories belong not just to me, but to my family, and to all the ordinary people of that era. I hope this book can help young people understand how their parents and grandparents lived, and also help people of my generation find a sense of connection. After the event, David hugged me, his eyes red. "Mom, you're amazing. Every ordinary person has a story," I patted his back. "You have your story too. It just hasn't been written yet." As summer arrived, David shared some good news. He was in a relationship. "It's Leo's teacher, Sarah," he said, a little shyly. "We met at a parent-teacher conference. She's a single mom. Her son is in Leo's class." "What do you like about her?" I asked. David thought for a moment. "She's genuine, not materialistic at all, and she's incredibly patient with the kids." He paused. "Most importantly, she makes me want to be a better man." That sentence warmed my heart. That's what love should be. In July, David brought Sarah and her son, Mark, to the community for a visit. Sarah was a gentle and elegant woman, soft-spoken but with a clear sense of self. Her son, Mark, was lively and adorable, and he and Leo hit it off immediately, watching the two boys chase each other in the garden, with David and Sarah standing side by side, talking and laughing. I suddenly felt that life had given me an unexpected gift, a second chance to see my son find himself and start anew. That evening, after seeing Sarah off, David came back to see me. "Mom," he said, sitting across from me with a serious expression, "I want to propose to Sarah. Do you? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you love her?" "I do. Are you ready to take on the responsibility of a family? Not just financially, but emotionally." David thought for a moment. "I think so. This time, I want to do it right. Do everything right." "Then go for it," I said with a smile. "You have my blessing." David squeezed my hand tightly. "Thanks, Mom. Thank you for giving me a second chance." "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said softly, "including me." Yes, I had given myself a second chance too to redefine my later years, to rebuild my relationship with my son, and to rediscover my own worth. The process wasn't easy, but it was worth all the tears and effort. Shortly after David and Sarah got engaged in early August, my old leg injury flared up. It happened at the community's summer fair. I had been on my feet all day, and by the time I got home, my right leg was in excruciating pain. The community doctor said it was likely inflammation and advised me to go to the hospital for a full checkup. "I'm on my way," David said anxiously on the phone. "Don't rush," I said, trying to hide the pain in my voice. "Maria can take me." After a series of tests at the hospital, the doctor looked at the x-rays with a frown. "Mrs. Miller, you have a slight stress fracture at the site of the old injury. You need at least 2 weeks of bed rest." "Is it that serious?" I was surprised. "Fractures heal slowly in seniors." "You didn't let it heal completely last time," the doctor said sternly. "This time, you must follow my orders." When I returned to the community, David was waiting anxiously at the entrance. Seeing me being pushed in a wheelchair, his face paled. "Mom, what happened?" He rushed over and took my hand. "It's nothing. Just a little rest and I'll be fine." I patted his hand. "The doctor is just being overly cautious." David insisted on taking time off work to care for me, but I refused. "Your studio is just getting started. Don't let this hold you back. The community has caregivers, and Leo can help." "But—" "No buts," I said firmly. "I can take care of myself." David couldn't argue with me and finally agreed to visit after work every day. When Sarah found out, she offered to have Leo stay at her place temporarily. "Don't worry about a thing, Helen," Sarah said gently but firmly. "Leo and Mark are best friends. It will be like a long sleepover for them." The days of bed rest were not easy. Despite the excellent care at the community, being stuck in bed all day was frustrating. I started to worry. What if my leg never fully healed? What if I couldn't live independently anymore? One rainy afternoon, as I was looking through an old photo album, David suddenly came in, soaking wet. "What are you doing here at this hour?" I asked, surprised. "Didn't you have a client meeting?" "It was rescheduled," David said, wiping the rain from his face. "I wanted to check on you." He sat by my bed, looking like he had something to say. "What is it?" I closed the album. "Mom," David took a deep breath. I need to talk to you about something." "What's so serious?" It's about money." My heart sank a little. Was David in financial trouble again? "You know I still have some money left from selling the house," I said cautiously. "If you need?" "No, that's not it." David quickly shook his head. "I'm not here to ask for money." On the contrary, he took an envelope out of his briefcase. "This is for you." I took the envelope, confused. Inside was a bank book showing a balance of $20,000. "This is the first installment," David explained. "The $100,000 you gave me for the down payment. I'm going to pay it all back, bit by bit." I looked at him, stunned. "David, I never said you had to pay it back." "I know," David said seriously. "But I want to. That money, it makes me feel like a parasite. I don't want to be that person anymore." Looking at his determined eyes, I suddenly understood. For David, paying back the money wasn't a financial transaction. It was a psychological one. He needed to do this to rebuild his self-respect. "All right," I nodded, accepting the bank book. "I'll hold on to it for you." David smiled, looking relieved. Then he took another small box out of his bag. "And this is for you." Inside was a brand new smartphone. My old one still works. "This one has health monitoring features," David explained excitedly. "It can track your heart rate, blood pressure, and it has a one-touch emergency call button. This way, I can always know how you're doing." My eyes started to water. This must have been expensive. "I bought it with the bonus from my first independent project," David said proudly. "I saved it just for you." In the following days, David visited almost every day, sometimes with soup Sarah had made, sometimes with a drawing from Leo. Professor Miller also dropped by often to tell me the latest news from the community. 2 weeks later, the doctor gave me permission for limited activity. David took half a day off work to accompany me to my follow-up appointment. "The healing is progressing well," the doctor said, looking at the new x-rays. "But you still need to avoid standing for long periods and strenuous exercise." On the way home, David supported me carefully, afraid I might fall. "Don't be so nervous," I laughed. "I'm not made of glass." "Mom," David said suddenly, "I want to ask you something." "What is it?" "Sarah and I are planning to get married next spring. After the wedding, we'd like you to come live with us." I stopped walking and looked at him in surprise. "What?" "I know you like it here," David quickly explained. "But if you live with us, Sarah and I can take better care of you, and Leo wants us to be a family, all together." I looked at my son's sincere eyes, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. A year ago, he wanted to kick me out of my home. Now, he wanted to bring me into his. What a transformation. "David," I said softly, "I'm very touched, but I want to continue living here." "But your leg." "My leg will heal," I said firmly. "Besides, I have so many friends here, plenty of activities, and excellent medical care. I don't want to be a burden to you." "How could you ever be a burden?" David said emotionally. "I know you mean well," I patted his hand. "But I need my own independent space, just as you need your own family." David wanted to say more, but I interrupted him. "How about this? I can come stay with you on weekends and holidays. We'll keep in touch regularly. And if the time comes when I really do need constant care, we can talk about it then. Okay?" David was silent for a moment, then finally nodded. "Okay, but you have to promise me, if you feel even a little unwell, you'll tell me immediately." "I promise." Back in my room, as David was helping me tidy up, he happened to see my bank passbook. "Mom," he exclaimed, You have this much saved?" I smiled. "It's the money from the house sale. After giving you the $100,000 and paying for my spot here, there's still a good amount left. But you're so frugal." "I'm used to it," I shrugged. "Besides, I have other plans for this money." "What plans?" I motioned for him to sit down. I'm planning to set up a foundation to provide legal aid for elderly people who have been abused or abandoned by their children. David's face changed. Mom, is this because of me? Not entirely. I shook my head. Living here, I've heard too many heartbreaking stories. Some seniors are tricked out of their property by their children. Some are kicked out of their homes. Most of them don't understand the law and are powerless to fight back. I want to help them. David lowered his head, his voice choked with emotion. I was such a monster. Let the past be the past, I said softly. What's important is that you've become a better person now. That means more to me than anything. David suddenly knelt before me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I swear, I will never let you down again for the rest of my life. I stroked his hair, just as I did when he was a little boy. I know, son, I know. At that moment, I felt a peace I hadn't felt before. Not because the pain was gone, but because the pain had finally been understood and accepted. Not because life was perfect, but because in its imperfection, love and hope could still be found. As the new year approached, the senior community was decorated with festive lights and banners. My leg had fully recovered, and I had rejoined the choir and the knitting circle. After my memoir was published, several media outlets interviewed me, and the community even invited me to give a talk to new residents. David's studio was thriving, and he had hired 2 assistants. His wedding to Sarah was set for March. Leo excitedly told me he was going to be the ring bearer, even though a 12-year-old was a bit old for the role. On New Year's Eve, David and Sarah arrived early with Leo and Mark. They helped me hang decorations and make dumplings. Sarah was a skilled cook, rolling out the dumpling wrappers quickly and perfectly round, while David was in charge of the filling, claiming he had inherited my secret recipe. Grandma, look at my dumpling. Leo held up a lopsided creation. It's wonderful, I encouraged him with a smile. Much better than my first attempt. Not to be outdone, Mark also held up his masterpiece. Grandma Helen, what about mine? Yours is wonderful too. I patted his head. Whoever eats these will be very lucky. Amid the laughter, I suddenly remembered last New Year's. I had just broken my leg. The atmosphere at home was heavy. Brenda was sullen all the time, and David was weighed down by his own troubles. In just 1 year, life had changed so drastically. Mom, what are you thinking about? David noticed I had drifted off. Nothing. I smiled and shook my head. Just thinking how wonderful this is. David seemed to understand. He gently squeezed my hand. It's only going to get better, Mom. We had our New Year's Eve dinner in the community dining hall, which had prepared a lavish feast and a variety show. My family and I sat at the main table, next to Professor Miller and a few other old friends. Helen, your son is so devoted, a new resident said admiringly. He visits you so often. Yes, he is, I nodded with pride. He's a good son. Hearing this, David's eyes lit up. He placed a piece of fish on my plate. Eat up, Mom, for a prosperous new year. After dinner, the community put on a fireworks display. We stood on the balcony, watching the brilliant colors explode in the night sky. Leo and Mark squealed with delight. David had his arm around Sarah's shoulders, and I stood between them, soaking in this hard-won happiness. Grandma, make a New Year's wish, Leo said suddenly. My wish has already come true, I said with a smile. Seeing all of you so happy. Then make another one. I thought for a moment. Then I wish that in the new year, we will all be healthy and safe, and continue to understand and love one another. The light from the fireworks illuminated everyone's faces. I saw the tears glistening in David's eyes, Sarah's gentle smile, and the innocent joy of the 2 children. At that moment, I was filled with immense gratitude. After the new year, I started preparing for the Legal Aid Foundation. With the help of the community administration, I connected with several lawyers and social workers, planning for an official launch in March. Helen, this foundation is very meaningful, Professor Miller said. I know a few retired judges who might be willing to offer pro bono consulting. That would be wonderful, I said excitedly. I really hope to help those who feel helpless. In mid-February, my memoir unexpectedly made it onto a well-known bookstore's bestseller list, drawing more attention. A television station even invited me to be on a talk show about new lifestyles for senior citizens. Mrs. Miller, How do you view the relationship between seniors and their children in modern society? The host asked. I thought for a moment and replied slowly, I believe love and understanding should be a two-way street. Children should be respectful to their parents, and parents should also be considerate of their children. We seniors shouldn't place our entire lives in the hands of our children. We should have our own lives and pursuits as well. After the show aired, I received many letters from viewers. Some were from seniors sharing similar experiences, while others were from young people reflecting on how they treated their parents. What surprised me most was a call from a publisher's editor who hoped I would write a book about how to rebuild broken parent-child relationships. You have a unique experience and perspective, the editor said over the phone. Your story has given many people hope. I agreed to consider the proposal. Perhaps sharing my experiences and lessons learned could truly help other families facing similar crises. In March, David and Sarah's wedding was simple and warm. I wore a custom-made dress that David had ordered for me and sat at the head table watching my son, beaming with happiness, greet the guests. Leo and Mark, in their little suits, served as very serious ushers. When David took Sarah's hand and walked toward the altar, tears streamed down my face. At that moment, I saw him as a toddler taking his first wobbly steps, as a proud college graduate, and as the man who wept with remorse at my bedside. Life's path is full of twists and turns, but as long as you don't give up hope, you can always find your way to the light. Mom, David hugged me tightly after the wedding. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a new beginning. Silly boy. I patted his back. A mother's love is forever. The day after the wedding, my legal aid foundation was officially launched. The ceremony was attended by media and community representatives. David and Sarah even took the day off to support me. This foundation will help seniors with financial difficulties pay for legal consultation and litigation fees, I said in my speech. It will also conduct educational programs to help seniors understand their rights. After my speech, a reporter asked me, Mrs. Miller, is the creation of this foundation related to your personal experiences? I looked at David standing beside me. He gave me an encouraging nod. Yes, I answered honestly. I have experienced the breakdown of a family relationship. I know the pain and helplessness firsthand, but I have also experienced reconciliation and rebuilding. I hope that through this foundation, we can not only help seniors protect their legal rights, but also promote the resolution of family conflicts. After the ceremony, David quietly told me, Mom, I want to donate to your foundation. You don't have to, I shook my head. I appreciate the thought, but you're newly married and have many expenses. No, I insist, David said firmly. Consider it my way of atoning for my past mistakes. Looking at his determined eyes, I finally nodded. All right, thank you. When spring arrived, the gardens at the senior community were in full bloom. I often walked with Professor Miller in the gardens, discussing the foundation's work or the plan for my new book. Sometimes, David's family would come for a picnic. Leo and Mark would chase each other on the lawn. David and Sarah would walk hand in hand, and I would sit on a bench, watching it all, my heart filled with a calm joy. Life is never perfect, and family relationships are bound to have friction and hurt. But as long as we are willing to reflect, apologize, forgive, and change, love will never disappear. It may be temporarily obscured, but it will eventually, like the spring sun, warm every heart that is willing to open.